Hello and welcome to another Sprues and Brews unboxing. Really exciting one today because we've got the new Ash Wastes box from Games Workshop for Necromunda. So first of all, massive thanks to Games Workshop for sending us this a little bit early before release. I'm a massive Necromunda fan. I have been really looking forward to this. One of my favourite games that Games Workshop have done is Gorkamorka, which was basically based on the Necromunda rule set and let you have games with vehicles out in the desert, and this looks to be a very similar situation where it is a add-on to Necromunda. It's kind of like an expanded rule book including rules for vehicles and mounts and stuff, and lets you play games out in the ash wastes that surround the hive. So desolate landscape, a bit more sparse on the terrain side, but you've got vehicles and mounts and cool stuff. And to launch this, Games Workshop have got this absolutely massive box. You probably can't tell quite how big it is on here, but it's the same size as the Dark Uprising box, and it is really weighty too. So I'm just going to flip this over and have a look at the back of the box, because it's so big I can't actually turn it around underneath the camera. So yeah, as you can see in there, oh, it's very shiny, I apologise. We get a whole plain surface, a load of scenery, 2 gangs, all the dice and cards and stuff, plus the new Ash Wastes rulebook, which is a full hardback rulebook as well. It's a big chunky rulebook, as we'll see in a bit. Yeah, really cool. So obviously we've got the Orlocks, which is an existing kit, but they get 2 of the Outrider quads as well, which is a brand new vehicle. And then we get a brand new warband in the Ash Wastes Nomads, and they get these dustback riders, which are weird, like flea things. So yeah, really cool. I'm very much looking forward to getting this all built and painted. Hopefully by the end of the video I will have some of this painted to show you what it looks like. We are planning on doing a new Necromunda campaign as well that we'll film and put up periodically in episodes on the website. We've also got a full companion piece over on spruesandbrews.com where I go through the rulebook in detail, go through all the changes, go through the mechanics of how the game works, and yeah, tell you how to play games in the Ash Wastes. So without further ado, we best open this big box of plastic, hadn't we? So if we lift off the lid, again, careful not to hit the camera with this big box. Straight away you can see it is a massive box filled with sprues. I don't know how many sprues you get in here. It looks like it's similar kind of content to the Dark Uprising box as well. So awful lot of stuff in this box. So first of all, let's move this out of the way and we'll have a look at some of these frames. So we get quite a lot of frames of brand new scenery. So these build the, in fact on the box you can see them there, the kind of Ash Wastes kind of raised tents, I guess they are really. Kind of the habitations that people out in the Ash Wastes live in. And we've got a couple of new kits. Look like these build up the structure on the top of it. Now the Zone Mortalis stuff is really modular. So I am obviously at the time of filming this I haven't actually played with any of these sprues yet. If I think there's any kit bashing potential in how they go together, I'll report back at the end of the video. But these are really nice, and it looks like they have got interior detail as well. Because one thing I do know is that the lids on these buildings you can leave separate, so that you can have models moving around inside these. I imagine a lot of the fittings and stuff from the Zone Mortalis stuff will probably click onto these as well, which is pretty good. So looks like we've got 2 of those. We'll put them to one side. We've got a couple of sprues of walkways. There might be more buried in the bottom of that box, but these are the new walkways that connect together those various terrain pieces. And then on this sprue we've got like greebling and fences and ladders and stuff, which I think are just used to add a bit of flavour to them. And there might be, I think there's a few distinct different buildings that you can put together using the kit as well, so this stuff may differentiate some of that. But these walkways are really nice. Double-sided. You could probably, again, I'll have a see if it fits together with the Zone Mortalis stuff, but you could probably use those to link Sector Mechanica stuff, Zone Mortalis stuff. All of the stuff so far is being kind of set dimensions for the structures. So I'll dig out a few pieces once I've built some up and show you kind of a size comparison how this can be linked together. So there's 2 frames of them so far. Looks like we've got, what have we got here? All sorts. 2, 3. So, have a look at this one first. This looks like another different accessory sprue with some like cloth kind of like drapes and are they doors maybe. Again, a lot of kind of doodads and greebling and ladders and stuff. I imagine if you want to do some like orc vehicle kit bashing, this kit might be quite cool because there's lots of bits in there that you could use for kit bashing purposes. You've got, I guess, a moisture evaporator or something. Yeah, they're very cool. I like these. I think these are going to be really nice to paint up these buildings. So we get one of those sprues. We've got 3 of these sprues, which these look like the roofs. Yeah, I think these are the roofs of the buildings, and then the various bits that go on top. Again, as usual, we'll have a look through the instruction manual and see how this all goes together, but this is really my first time of looking at these sprues as well, and I've got to say they look really nice. So I'd actually done a couple of Necromunda scenery painting articles over on Warhammer Community, and Necromunda stuff it can be a bit intimidating at first because you've got a lot of scenery, but it can be done fairly quickly. For the Zone Mortalis stuff, generally I'd spray it black, spray the silver detail silver, then hit it all with Mechanica Standard Grey. That is through an airbrush, but you could do it with rattle cans as well. And then basically a lot of the work is done with washes, so I soak the entire piece in water and then put inks and washes and kind of pigments and weathering powder into that randomly. Again, a load more water, let it all flow around, and once it dries you get a nice really grimy feeling. Now with this stuff, obviously they're kind of weathered out in the Ash Wastes, so I'm thinking what you could probably do is spray them like whatever primary colour you want it, and then go in with sponges and washes and stuff, and you can quickly get a battlefield together. Again, hopefully I should have some painted to show you by the end of the vid. So there's 3 sprues of that, so what's that, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sprues of scenery so far. We then get the normal Necromunda barricades sprue. So this has got your loot boxes on there, it's got your barricades, it's got your where's the little beastie monster thing, and a double-sided coin. So again, that's been in all of the recent Necromunda boxes, I think, so don't need to look at that too much. So another sprue there. And that leaves in the box, I'll pull this out first, this is less interesting, your standard kind of blast template one in a nice orange colour. And then we've got the new kit, so we'll pull these out and have a look at them. So let's separate these out a little bit. We've got some Orlocks there, and we've got some new stuff there. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at the Orlocks first. Now they get your standard Orlock kit. Again, we've seen this before, it's the standard kit that you can get. You can get a weapon upgrade kit for these as well if you do want to give them different weaponry that isn't available to them on this sprue. So that is your standard Orlock kit there. The first new kit that we get, however, are the new quad bikes. So yeah, these are really cool. So you get 2 of these identical single sprues for them. I believe there's a choice of 2 different weapons on these. I think they can have a harpoon launcher and a heavy bolter, if I remember rightly. These are really nice. Now obviously, I suspect all of the gangs will probably get their own vehicles for this. We recently saw on Warcom the big truck that is available to any gang and is hired from the House of Coin, the Guild of Coin, whatever they're called. But I suspect each individual gang will have their own bespoke vehicle or vehicles. As we'll see in a bit, the rulebook makes mention of bikes and the like, so something akin to Atlan Jackals or something would be cool. But yeah, that's a really, really cool kit. I'm looking forward to building this up and painting it. It's not only a massive model, obviously it's just a small quad bike, but it looks very, very cool. So you get 2 of those in the set. You also get the new Ash Wastes Nomads. So again, 2 sprues of these, as with all gangs in Necromunda, and this allows you to build your Ash Wastes Nomad gang. Now again, at the time of filming this, I don't know if there's anything coming out alongside it, but I assume either alongside it or soon after we'll get I don't know, House of Ash or something, a supplement book for these guys. And I suspect we might see another couple of kits for them as well. Obviously they've got the mites, but it wouldn't surprise me if these get like a heavy support one, even if this is resin from Forge World, to a big bug with a, you know, las cannon or something on the back. But yeah, these are really cool. Again, we'll have some of these assembled and painted up at the end of the video so I can show you what they look like in the flesh. But they are very nice. You get 2 sprues of them. And finally, there's a lot of plastic in this box. We get the dust mites. And these are cool. So really weird looking creatures, basically giant fleas that can be ridden. Looking at the instructions, there's a couple of different weapon options on these as well. So I think there's a couple of ranged options, there's a close combat option. I think you can build 2 per sprue, so 4 in total. And there's a couple of different poses with the legs and stuff. So 4 of them you can probably build all differently. I think you'll have 2 of each kind of pose of bug, and then 4 different weapon loadouts on the guys on top. So that's good. And obviously in a full Necromunda campaign, you'd want to think about how you put these together with your weaponry. I'm just going to build what looks cool. There's plenty in here for both gangs to be able to build a legal kind of 1000 credit force, and in Games of Ash Wastes you actually get kind of a 400 credit buffer for your vehicles and mounted stuff. So if you've got an existing gang, you could in theory pick up a couple of vehicles or this kind of stuff and add it to your gang. So that is all the sprues, and there's a lot of stuff. So I've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 18 sprues of stuff. And here's a quick look at some of the components that I've managed to paint up in time for the review. Gotta say, the scenery is absolutely amazing and a real joy to put together. It's actually very modular, so you've got a lot of these platforms that can kind of string the different sections of it together. And if you have a look at the piece, a lot of the ladders and these kind of support rails clip on and off, so you can change the change the layout of the scenery. So you can remove those, you can add the ladders. There's a few various things that you can clip onto it, which is really cool. There's a sprue that we saw earlier with quite a few, like I guess detailing parts. So all these kind of bits are fully modular, so you could, and all the piping underneath and stuff, so you could in theory have a big structure with maybe 2 of the hab blocks on top of each other. Speaking of the hab blocks, if we get this one over here, so the ladders and stuff again can all be taken off to change the layout, and the top of it can actually be removed, giving you a fully detailed interior, which is really, really nice. So I think that's a really fun touch. For these, they were quite quick to paint up. I sprayed them black, I sprayed them silver, went to town with washers, and then lots of weathering powders to kind of build up the kind of rusty, ashy kind of look that I've gone for them, and then went in with a few details. So yeah, really, really nice kits. Easily as nice as the Zone Mortalis stuff to put together. I've also managed to paint up some of the gangers as well. So unfortunately, I was struck down with COVID over the week, so I didn't manage to get all of the gangers done, but I did manage to make a start on the Helamites, if this wants to focus on it, which are a really, really nice kit. So again, you've got a few different options on building these. There's a couple of poses of the creature itself, and with the riders as well, and I've been able to build essentially 4 different looking ones with a range of weapon options. Now obviously if we saw the full rules for these will probably be in a separate supplement at some point, but I've got to say they're really nice to paint up, and it's not the end of the world if I haven't built them with the optimal loadout. You get a lot of points to play with in Games of Ash Wastes, so it really doesn't matter what you build these guys with. Equally, managed to paint up the quad bikes as well for the Orlocks. Again, these are a really, really nice kit. You've got a choice of 2 different heads for the gunner, 2 different heads for the driver, and then a heavy bolter or a harpoon launcher on the top as well. And I've actually kept the crew separate so I can remove them for painting and storage. And we'll have a quick look at the other one with the harpoon launcher. And again, really, really nice. I tried to give it kind of an ashy, deserty base on these as well. That'll go with this plain surface. So yeah, really happy with those. So if we lift this off here, is there anything there that's going to give anything away? No, they're all existing kits on there. That's a shame. To see if we have any teasers of the future. So if we take that out there, we'll have a look at the assembly instructions in a bit, and we'll have, oops, a full look at the rulebook in some detail later on in the video as well. But what else is in here? We get a sheet of tokens and templates, the usual kind of stuff that you would expect. It looks like we've got some new ones to represent vehicle statuses as well. So again, we'll see what they do when we get to the actual instructions. We get a pair of Ash Waste reference sheets. So these are going to be really handy for seeing the kind of, it looks like it's just the Ash Waste specific stuff. So we've got insanity chart, interesting, vehicle collision, damage charts, wound table, falling damage table, lasting injury tables on there we've seen before. Ah, here we go, and then various damage types based on where you hit on a vehicle. So yeah, these are always handy to have to one side for playing the games, one for each player in there. We get a playing surface. We'll get that out properly in a second and show you what it looks like, but that is a Ash Wastes playing surface to use basically with the scenery in the box to play some games. So if we jump cut in a second, I'll show you what that looks like. Can't quite fit the entire thing in shot, but here is the playing surface. It is a little bit glossy because it's not actually paper, it feels a little bit plasticky. So it should be a bit harder wearing than a paper mat. I'm sure they'd all kind of, if you had this set up and put some books over it, you get rid of the creases and stuff in there, no problem. But as an initial playing surface for the games, looks really good. Especially as you can see where you can like position the buildings and stuff. You've got a bit of a road through there. What's really cool as well, which you didn't realise, is that it's actually dual-sided. So again, if we flip this over, you've actually got a nighttime side as well, because there are rules for fighting at night as well. So yeah, really like that map. We also get a number of different card decks in the box as well. So we've got 20 of the kind of standard fighter stat cards that we've seen before. They're really, really useful for recording stuff between games. I hope alongside this box we see these released to something that you can purchase as well, because they're so useful for games. I could do with like 100 of these for all my Necromunda campaign, so I just like using them. They're cool. We also get 4, I believe, of the new vehicle cards as well. So again, it'd be nice to have a pack of these for when future vehicles are released. You can record their stats on there, but they're pretty useful. In fact, there's 5 of them there. That's cool. There is also a deck of Ash Wastes tactics as well. So obviously normally for the gangs these sell out really quickly when they're available separately. These will all be in the main rule books. We'll look at those in more detail in a little bit. But you get a full deck of tactics cards, which is cool. And then you get some campaign stuff as well. So during a campaign, basically you're trying to take over road sections and make trade routes from one location to another. So you get a deck of cards showing you the bonuses for controlling those trade routes, which is really cool. And then you get a deck of cards for the actual individual road sections as well. So you can just kind of deal these out to the players, and these are the locations that you fight over. And there's loads here, which is really, really cool. So kind of like a self-contained campaign in here. All that's missing really is if there was a map in the box as well, that'd be amazing. I'm probably going to make one myself, and then you could put little pins or something in to show, you know, what people control. But obviously you've got the cards to show what people control as well. So yeah, these are really useful, and I'm glad that they're included in the box. And then finally we get a range ruler. We get bases for everything in the box. Now I would note that these are the standard bases, not the Zone Mortalis bases. It makes sense because these gangs are fighting in the Ash Waste, so I'll use these for building them. And then finally some dice. We do get some new dice in there. such as, I don't know if you can see there, some of the vehicle conditions and vehicle damage, location and damage dice for the vehicles. So in addition to the standard Necromunda dice as well, in yellow and black, classic Necromunda colours. So before we delve into the core rulebook and look what's changed and all the fun new stuff in there, I thought we'd have a look at the construction guide as well. What's interesting as well is that the gang lists are included in here. They are kind of introductory ones that get you by until presumably the House of book comes out for the Ash Wastes, and I suspect that book would probably have all your vehicles and the big truck and stuff in there. So again, no word, I don't even know if it's officially coming, but I just assume there's going to be a book coming soon after this box. So let's have a look. So we've got the Dustback Helmites. Yeah, they're really fun. So most Necromunda stuff can go together in multiple ways, and often there's additional sprues released that can change out the weapon loadouts. This book will basically show you a few different ways of building them. So you've got a long rifle armed one with a blast pistol, another one with a blast pistol on the other bug, and then a chain lance there. So you've got a variety of different weapons you can take on those four guys. You've then got your Ash Wastes Nomads War Party. So you've got your Chieftain, who has a chain lance, Nomad Watcher, which is your kind of champion equivalent, with a charge caster, which is basically a rocket launcher. Really cool. And then your Nomad Warriors, so you've got 5 different body types that you can build by the look of things. And then obviously you've got a range of different weaponry you can give those to load them out in different ways. Again, I'm not going to be too worried about what I arm these with, because there's going to be way over 1,000 points worth of, 1,000 credits worth of stuff within this box. So I'm just going to build what looks cool, and then from that assemble a kind of a gang for Necromunda, because presumably we're going to get other stuff in Forge World models as well. So what I would say is, looking at painting them, all these back banners and stuff on your various guys, I would probably leave them separate, because it's going to make it a lot easier to paint them, because this stuff's going to get in the way of some of the detail there. So yeah, what I'm going to do is leave them as a sub-assembly, paint that up separately. It'll just make these a little bit easier to paint. Orlocks, again, exactly what you get in the standard Orlock kits. I'm not going to go too far into these. It gives you some examples of what you can build. I believe you do get a heavy stubber on that sprue as well, and again there is an upgrade sprue. If you want to change any of those weapons, you're going to want House of Iron for the full rules for those guys. And then we've got the quad. Again, it's the same kit, 2 sprues the same, but you've got a choice of weapon options and a choice of heads on each of you guys. So this looks like it's going to be quite easy to go together. It's going to be quite a small footprint. That is the base that it goes on. So yeah, nice little diddy little quad bikes, and again you've got a choice of harpoon launch or a heavy bolter. So I'm just going to build one of each because I've got the options available in the kit and they look cool. Onto the actual buildings. These are quite a lot of parts, and it looks like they used quite a few kind of modular bits to do this. So while they recommend sticking together a lot of the parts, some of the things they do leave to say separate. So as you can see, you've got like the interior detail here. There is a lid that you build up in the next step that goes on top of that. But if you don't glue it down, it means that you're able to paint the detail interior easier, and you've got the gameplay mechanic of things being able to move through these buildings. You have got little doors that can go over some of these or leave them open. You're going to have lots of choice on how to do this. Presumably this will come out as a kit following this as well. The time of filming, I don't know the RRP. If I do know it by the time I edit it, I'll stick it on the screen now. But with Dark Uprising, I ended up buying 2 boxes of it, and then I bought like the scenery from a 3rd box on eBay, and that gave me enough to do massive Zone Mortalis games at a much cheaper price than buying the individual kits. So if the RRP is good, just for the scenery, and obviously Orlock bodies and the quads are always helpful, it might be worth picking up a couple of these and selling the rulebook separately, or get rid of the parts that you don't want. But certainly to fill out for Ash Wastes, you're going to want sparser scenery anyway. So the contents of this box plus a few, I don't know, if you've got some rocky outcrops or something, to be fair, is probably enough to fill a battlefield anyway. It's not quite like the Zone Mortality where you want it really dense. But yeah, really, really cool. There's lots of like optional stuff that can go on it as well to give it a bit of flavour. All this stuff, the ladders and stuff, it says don't stick them, because you can just hook them on and then you can change your layouts then during games, which is a nice touch. I do like these that go on as well. They're pretty fun. And then again, all the kind of walkways, if you leave them in separate parts and don't stick them to the main buildings, it means that you've got quite a lot of options for putting them together. So I think on the next page we see an example of that. So it looks like you get two, like a really large one, a kind of medium-sized building, a couple of platforms, and then the walkways to link them all. So yeah, honestly, you probably don't need much more than that for an Ash Waste game. It's on a 4x4 board. The map that comes with the game is 3x3. So a few, like a ruined vehicle or something would be cool for scenery, and a few rocky outcrops. You probably don't want to go too over the top on loads of scenery, because it is meant to be like the desolate waste outside the cities. So yeah, onwards, we've got the actual gang lists here. So these are kind of like a get you by gang list using the contents of the box. So we've got the Orlock Road Captain, the Road Sergeant, the Gunner, same as they are in the House of Iron. But then you've got the Outrider Quad. It's 120 credits base, and then you've got to add a heavy weapon to it. So you're going to have a harpoon launcher for 110 or a heavy bolter for 160. So you're looking between 230 and 280. Depending on what you load it out with. Bearing in mind you get 400 credits at the start of a campaign to get vehicles. Realistically, you're only going to have one of these vehicles out of that allowance. But I don't think there's anything to stop you taking the other one out of your main allowance. So yeah, I'm sure there's some stuff you can do there if you want to get two vehicles in from the outset. You also get all the kind of skills and rules that you need, again, to get you by. If you have got House of Iron, obviously you can equip your Orlocks however you like, and you've just got the new rules for the quad there. The Ash Wastes Nomads, again, is a brand new gang. Again, you get a get you by kind of list. I suspect we will see the book soon with their full rules. We've got a Nomad Chieftain. They've got 2 wounds each and 2 attacks, which is pretty good. Gang Hierarchy Leader, Group Activation 2. Pretty standard leader stats, to be fair. Weapon Skill 3, which is pretty good. Ballistic Skill 4 plus average. You've got the Nomad Watcher, which is their champion. Basically profile switch the other way, so he's Ballistic Skill 3, so he's going to be your gunner guy, I guess. Group Activation 1, again, standard champion kind of rules. He's got 2 wounds as well. Nomad Warrior, fairly average stat line. And then your Dust Riders are prospects, so they're your Juves, your little kind of bug riding guys. And they've got the Dustback helmet, which we'll see in a little bit. And then gear-wise, you've got the options that you can take in the kit. Obviously, that rocket launcher is 155 credits. That's an expensive one. But again, in games of Ash Waste, your Nomads are probably going to want that to crack open the vehicles and stuff. So yeah, some interesting stuff. And again, we get all their rules on here. And then weapons and war gear here. So we have a quick look at the Charge Caster, because that's a new weapon. Short range 20 at +1, long range 40. Strength 6 with a crack rocket. AP -2, 3 damage, but it is unwieldy. 6+ arrow check, but I believe there's an upgrade they can have to automatically pass that, a kind of a backpack full of rockets, which is pretty cool. Yeah, pretty cool. We also have the war gear here. So an Ash Cloak basically gives you a respirator, and they get a 5+ shrug against battlefield conditions. So obviously out in the waste there's going to be dust storms and stuff, so that gives you a bit of resilience against that. The Dustback Hellamite gives you the mounted condition, and his movement becomes 8, and he gets the Mighty Leap skill. So again, a lot of this stuff, once I've got the main rulebook open, we'll have a look at what some of this stuff does. Sky Mantle is a new bit of gear, gives you a new action, Hide in the Wastes. If it's at least 12 inches away from the nearest enemy model, they gain the hidden condition. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's pretty fun. So yeah, again, we'll have a look at that in more detail when we get to the rules. You also get all your kind of weapon traits and stuff in here. So it is very much a, here's all the rules you need to play with the contents of the box. But ideally, you're probably are going to get a supplement book with the full rules for them, but you can certainly make a legal gang and start playing with the stuff in here. So yeah, let's have a look at the core rulebook and see what is in the new Ash Wastes book. So now let's take a look at the new Ash Wastes rulebook that's included in the box, and as you see, it's a full hardback rulebook, so a big chunky one, and thankfully it contains pretty much the full Necromunda rules as well as the extra Ash Wastes stuff, making it really good. I kind of expected us to just get the extra Ash Wastes stuff like vehicles and mounts in here, but it has got everything you need to play, so that is really cool for new players as well. So let's have a quick look through this and see what is inside. So as ever, the book starts off with quite a bit of lore talking about the location that we fight over. So Cinderak Crater is previously was a hive, and then due to some espionage and backstabbing, the plasma reactor accidentally went off, destroying everything for kilometres around and just leaving this crater. In the ruins of the hive, this kind of settlement starts growing up and becomes a major trade route, as all the main kind of roads of Necromunda kind of pass through this area, and this is kind of the area that we fight over in games of Ash Wastes. So that's pretty fun. We find out a little bit about the Nomads, but not massively so. I suspect that we're going to see a House of Ash or something like that come out after this book, kind of detailing them in a bit more detail, and obviously going into their full gang list and stuff. We also get a really nice map of Necromunda, the various hive cities, and some of the locations that we're fighting over in the campaign as well. I believe this map is also going up for pre-order today as well, so I think I'm going to get this. I think it's a big like A1 sized map. Stick it up on the gaming room wall. I think that'll look quite cool. So yeah, it's really cool. We then get a breakdown of the components, and in this kind of next section of the book is very much the kind of like rules, how to play, goes over all the kind of main principles that we've got. So what I'm going to do is not look at kind of the old rule stuff, because obviously we've already seen that in the past. What I am going to do is kind of focus on some of the new stuff. So vehicles, for example, can have multiple fire arcs, especially where we've got bigger vehicles that might have multiple turrets and gunners and stuff. You might have a number of different fire arcs in different directions, so that's pretty cool. Cover works exactly the same for vehicles as infantry, with the same kind of principles, so nothing too different there. Vehicles, like fighters, have different statuses they can be in as well. So the main state they'll be in is mobile, so where they can move around, they can still operate. They can also be stationary, and generally this means that they've either stalled, which means the engine stopped and they've got to get it restarted again, and there is a special action to restart the engine, or it's wrecked, completely destroyed, and it basically becomes a piece of scenery on the board. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, a lot of this is covering stuff that we've already seen in previous Necromunda games. Obviously there are a couple of new bits here as well. So mounted is a new thing that's introduced. It's kind of a double-edged sword. So if you're mounted, what you can do is come within an inch of an enemy fighter and make a kind of attack as you pass, which is really cool. However, the downside is if you get pinned, they can become knocked down, and essentially because of the weight of their mount, they can take damage. It's more difficult for them to stand up again. Plus points for the Chumbawamba reference with the I get knocked down rule. Also, because a mounted fighter without their mount is pretty much dead out in the wastes, there's no rules for them becoming dismounted within the battle. What you can do is create a separate fighter card with them on foot, and then you can choose to bring your mount to a battle or not, but you can't lose it mid-game. So again, that makes any kind of rules bits a little bit more clearer. As for profiles, vehicles, when we get to them, have their own kind of like stat line. Now, unlike Gorka Morka, you don't have a stat for the vehicle and then separate stats for the gunners and drivers. Each vehicle, including the crew, is its own profile, it's its own entity on the battlefield. That vehicle, crew included, will gain experience, will get damaged, will earn skills. I think that is a good thing, because it could become very messy where you're trying to keep track of different profiles for the gunner and the driver and remembering who's got XP. By consolidating it into a single stat line that includes the crew, they made it a lot easier to play the game and eliminate some of the bookkeeping that we could have had otherwise. So I think that's pretty cool. And like I say, they can gain experience, they can gain stats, they can get characteristic increases. It's really, really cool. There's a couple of new things in here. So they've got different toughness characteristics depending on the facing. Obviously old school 40k players will be aware of that. You've got HP rather than wounds. Same kind of thing really. They've also got a handling characteristic. Now that represents how agile a vehicle is. So is it able to keep control if it slides off course, or is it quite cumbersome and difficult to handle? So we'll see that come into play with some of the loss of control checks that we get later on. And they've also got vehicle cards. We saw them earlier in the video, but they have got stat cards for both of these. Again, I hope that they sell these separately in packs, because they are really, really useful for games. So one of the big differences that we get in Ash Wastes games is that in addition to the 1,000 credits you get for founding a campaign, you also get an extra 400 credits that can only be spent on vehicles and mounted fighters. If you don't spend all that allowance, you've lost it. However, obviously you could buy 500 credits worth of vehicles using this 400 allowance plus 100 from your main 1,000 credits. Bearing in mind that in non-Ash Waste games, you're probably not going to be able to bring vehicles unless the arbitrator or the rules of that mission allow. So it's maybe not best to go all in on vehicles. You probably do want some guys on foot as well for the kind of backbone of your gang, and then have a few vehicles in there. And vehicles are really, really cool. I'm sure as the various expansions come out, we'll see different ways of hiring vehicles and upgrading them and adding them to our gang. So yeah, that's pretty fun. And likewise, they can be given upgrades and be equipped with stuff. So they work very much the same way as a fighter. So really, really cool. And it's a nice way that they've done it. So the game will go through how to set up your game. It does mention for vehicles, certain missions will allow vehicles. Certain missions might, force you to leave out any vehicle fighter cards. Now, vehicles get their own suite of actions. A lot of them are similar to the fighter ones, however there are some differences, and there's some cool stuff in here. So for example, there's a new basic action, move and shoot, which allows you to make a move and fire with the gun, which essentially means that you can move twice and shoot in a vehicle. Again, represents how quick they are, how agile they are. Really, really like that. You can also drift, so you can move into your side arc, but you've got to do a loss of control check once you've done it. And essentially that's a handling test, and if you fail it, there's a chance that your vehicle can spin or flip over entirely and become destroyed. So obviously it's a bit of a risk doing stuff that forces you to do a handling check, unless you've got a good handling characteristic. So spin, you basically do a hairpin turn and spin the vehicle 180 degrees after moving, which is really cool, but you probably don't want to be doing it in a big like HGV or something, because you're probably going to end up flipping the vehicle, but the option's there. You can ram, so you go a double action, head into another vehicle, you add D6 to your moving and crush things. You can run over enemy fighters as part of any normal move. They get a chance of hopping out the way, or something horrific could happen to them. There's also a full throttle double action, which basically lets you move 3 times your movement. However, if you turn at any point, then you've got to do a loss of control check. Basically, you just put your foot down and go off in a straight line, but if you do have to turn, you could spin out. So yeah, some really cool stuff there. Stationary vehicles and broken vehicles also have their own actions, and these really relate to trying to start the engine, so jump starting it, just turn the engine over, which won't start it but gives you a bonus to starting it properly next turn. You can also choose to just release the handbrake and let the vehicle roll forwards or backwards as well. So there's some fun stuff you can do there. Some of the scenarios in the book start off with a broken down vehicle. You've got to try and get started. So I can see some cinematic stuff here where you know, what your gang's got a stored vehicle and you're trying to get it running again before the enemy gang comes in and takes you out. So yeah, some pretty fun stuff there. Now, vehicle impacts, it's based on the movement of the vehicle. So the faster that it moves, the more damage it does when it hits you, the greater strength it has as well. So yeah, absolutely, like with Gork and Morka, ploughing a big truck into something is definitely going to be a valid tactic. That obviously you're going to take some damage yourself. Driving over people is fairly horrific as well. They've got to do a vehicle collision damage test as well when they get hit, so they do have a chance of jumping out of the way with an initiative test, but if they fail that, they're probably going to go squish under the wheels, especially if it's a fast vehicle. You know, 10-inch movement, strength 9, AP -3, 3 damage is probably going to be curtains for most fighters. So yeah, watch out for those enemy vehicles, guys. And then yeah, obviously the way that vehicles will interact with terrain as well will cause them to take damage as well. So as we've seen, a lot of the actions make it quite difficult to manoeuvre. You might want to purposefully take one of the kind of lower movement but easier to position actions in order to get around scenery. Obviously you can have areas of the battlefield that are going to be quite kind of tight with you know, columns and barricades and stuff, where you might not want to be going flat out, otherwise you've got a chance of hitting something and damaging your vehicle. So that gives you something else to think about, which is pretty fun. So yeah, we see an example of the Ash Waste terrain set up here. The big hab blocks always have a loot token in them as well, which is pretty fun. So it gives you a focal point to try and fight over. Obviously, you're not going to want masses of scenery down in an Ash Wastes game as well, so a few interest points is definitely useful, because as we'll see in a bit, the battlefield itself is a bit of a threat, where the very sand that you're walking on can cause damage to your fighters. So you certainly want the scenery, you don't want just an open grassy surface, but having a mixture of open deadly areas and little choke points and vantage points and stuff will make for an interesting battlefield. So the stuff that comes in the box is really nice. If you're playing on a bigger playing surface, maybe a couple of Minotaur crates or something, just to add a bit of you know, a few interest points on the battlefield. But yeah, I think you get a decent amount of terrain in the box to start playing some games. So yeah, now shooting is very much the same until we get to vehicles. So if we flip forward to the vehicles, things are a little bit different compared to normal shooting. So for a start, when you make a hit against them, you've got to determine which part of the vehicle you've hit. So there's some custom dice in the box, and that will determine whether you've hit the body, the engine, the crew, or the drive. And then there's a damage dice, which covers glancing, penetrating, and catastrophic hits. And based on the combination of those, you'll do different things to the enemy vehicle. So for example, if you got a glancing hit on the drive, then the vehicle makes a loss of control test. However, if you got a catastrophic hit on the body, then a vehicle weapon's destroyed, it loses a hull point, and it has to make a loss of control test. So obviously based on where you hit and how severe that hit is, it'll do different things to the vehicles. Generally speaking, they'll keep going until they run out of hull points or it's destroyed in some other way. So one of the outcomes of a loss of control test is that the vehicle actually flips, and regardless of how many kind of hull points that you've got, a flipped vehicle is essentially destroyed. You're not getting it back on the road within that game, so it's treated as destroyed. So even a vehicle with lots of hull points, there are ways of causing it to become destroyed, and that's where some of the tactics will come in. So a big armoured convoy and you're going to struggle to crack through it with weapons, why not throw some vehicles at it and try and knock it over? So yeah, there's some fun stuff that you can do there. Like with normal kind of fighters, the crew can become injured and the vehicle can take damage as well. And like I say, this is all recorded on a single card. They exist as a single entity, but there's some stuff that can carry over here, which is pretty fun. Like I said, lots of control tests are just done on a handling test, and based on the result of the control dice, you'll either swerve, jackknife or roll, again with different degrees of severity based on what's happened. So yeah, I'm looking forward to currying some vehicles into each other and seeing what we can do. I was a big fan of Gork and Walker, so love that kind of stuff. So yeah. Now again, a lot of this is you know, stuff that we've seen in previous Necromunda expansions. They've consolidated all the rules together in here to give you kind of like a core book with up-to-dated rules. For anyone with older rules books, a lot of the minor rules tweaks are actually on an FAQ on Warhammer Community at the minute as well, which is really cool. Kind of brings everyone up to the same level. But, you know, generally speaking, outside of the new kind of vehicle and mount-based stuff, this is just a tidying up of the rules, so that's pretty good. Some of the experience stuff's changed a tiny bit, not massively though. And we go on to gaining skills and the like. Psychers, while there's none in the box, we also get the 4 Psychic rules as well, and a Perils of the Warp chart for them to roll on when bad things happen. Now for me, the most exciting part of the book is the new Ash Wastes campaign. So all the Necromunda campaigns have been really, really cool, and you've got one in the core book, there is one in Dark Uprising. A few of the various sets have brought out different campaigns to play through, and this is no different. We saw earlier in the unboxing that there's a number of cards included within this box to let you play through the campaign, and it is really, really cool. Essentially the gangs are fighting for control of trade routes across the planet. So there are various road sections, and these road sections, joined with other road sections, will create trade routes between locations. And that's essentially what you're trying to do over the course of the campaign. While one road section might get you some credits, not much in the way of credits, but a little bit of credits, a full trade route will give you a bigger benefit. So for example, this section here is worth, what, 2d6 credits, not very much. But having the full route between these two locations actually gives you access to a bounty hunter that you can take in your games. And what's really fun is that there's multiple ways to get those routes. So obviously this is the obvious one, but you could take the long route and connect them that way. It's going to take longer, and you're going to need more road sections, but you've got those key strategic locations on the map. And that's what a lot of the fighting in this campaign will be over, trying to get these routes, trying to stop your opponents from having those routes, and take over those road sections that they need to complete their trade route. So really, really cool. Like with most Necromunda campaigns as well, it takes place over 2 different periods, split with a session of downtime. So you've got the Season of Flame and the Season of Ash to represent the environmental effects of Necromunda. Generally speaking, there's never a good time to travel across the Ash Wastes, but some are worse than others. Now, based on where you fight over as well, there's different charts to roll on for the missions. So what it will do is give you some scenarios that are suited to that kind of environment. So you've got the near wastes, where you're closer to civilization, there's more settlements. You go into the deep wastes, where things start getting a bit more sparse and barren. And then you've got the wild wastes, which are lawless and out of the eyes of Lord Helmore. And generally speaking, bad stuff happens. Well, relatively bad stuff compared to the everyday bad stuff that happens on Necromunda. So that's quite cool, and that could be a factor in how you pick which road sections to fight over, which road sections you try and take from your opponents. Like I say, with the Season of Flame, we get different weather conditions based on which season that you're fighting in, which is pretty cool. And then at the end of the campaign, the Arbiter will award various triumphs based on what they've done. So the person who's got the longest unbroken chain of roads, the person who's killed the most enemy fighters, other cool achievement-based stuff that they can try and do. So yeah, really, really like that. Now, the battlefield itself is very dangerous in games of Ash Wastes. As we've seen, the planet's getting beaten by dust storms. The temperature can raise to, you know, really horrible conditions to fight in, and the sand and dust and just rubbish on the surface of the battlefield will do bad things to you. So based on where you were fighting, you actually roll on the chart to have different battlefield effects. And I do believe that some of the Nomad characters that we've seen previewed from Warhammer Community might have a way of like changing these weather conditions as well as a kind of weapon. But if we see on like a near waste game, 6 to 8 on a 2d6 is just open ground. But lower than that, you could end up with the battlefield counting as difficult terrain. You can have things such as ash storms, as a glass surface that actually damages your vehicles as you fight over it. So yeah, lots of different cool things that can happen. So yeah, that will also be a factor in where you fight, because generally speaking, near waste ones are friendlier, they're less likely to cause damage to you. As it gets more desolate, even your kind of average result of 6 to 8 is bad. So for example, in the wild wastes, 6 to 8, the ground counts as difficult and dangerous terrain, so you're going to have to want to be on those scenery pieces and stuff to not kind of hinder your guys, so that's quite a nice change. We mentioned the seasons earlier, and again, this is different weather effects and the like that happens based on the season it is within Necromunda. So there can be thunderstorms, there can be soaring temperatures that make it really difficult to fight. It means that you can only do a single move action if you haven't got a respirator because it's so exhausting. You can have ash storms, there's all sorts of cool stuff here. And again, I think the Nomad character that we've seen previewed can manipulate those as well, which is pretty cool. So yeah, a new mission type that's introduced here is something that we've seen in Gorkamorka. Again, a lot of inspiration from Gorkamorka, I think, in this game. And I like to call them Scooby-Doo missions. The game calls them rolling roads, and essentially you have a battlefield, and at the start of each turn, everything on the battlefield will move back 8 inches to represent the fact that the camera's panning up and everything's moving back. So to stay still, essentially, something has to move 8 inches, which is great. It means you can have races, you can have chases, all the scenery's moving back and then randomly placed again on the other end. So you don't necessarily want to put your foot down, otherwise you might go driving into something. But equally, you don't want to be kind of hanging back, otherwise in the next turn you might kind of fall off the end of the map and then you've got to try and re-enter the battlefield. So these are really, really fun missions. These were always my favourite in Gorkamorka. And as we'll see in a bit, there's some fun scenarios, like there's a death race, which takes advantage of this, where basically over the course of 8 turns you're trying to win the race while also killing your opponent. So yeah, some really, really fun stuff like that. Now, even though this is based around Ash Waste games, you still get the rules for Zone Mortalis and Sector Mechanicus here, and there's no reason why you can't mix those different environments into an Ash Waste campaign as well. For example, maybe you'll have a single mission where you go into a hive to get supplies, maybe. I think that's a nice way of mixing up the environments, and it also means that some gangs are going to favour different styles. You know, some gangs might really favour the kind of open plains of the Ash Wastes, where others prefer the tight confines of the Underhive. So I'd certainly say try and mix some of these into your campaigns to make it even more fun. Now, scenarios will specify if vehicles are allowed. If they're not, essentially you just can't use them in the game. I think that's part of the reason why you start with this like side deck of 400 credits worth of vehicles. And obviously you're free to add to that as you go, but I think having a blend of vehicles and just gangers on foot will be really useful. And as I say, I think you get 13 different scenarios with some really cool stuff. There's some scenarios where the vehicles are running on fumes, so there's a chance that they just run out of fuel and just shut down completely during the battle. There's a cool one where one of the gang starts with a vehicle that is broken down. They've got to try and get it started and get out before the enemy gang comes in. You've got a proper, Western style showdown in a remote settlement. Yeah, some really, really cinematic fun stuff with these missions. And again, combined with any of the existing Necromunda scenarios that we've got from other supplements and books and stuff, you've got a big range of different games that you can do. Roll and Road ones are probably my favourite ones. So you've got stuff like here, a cargo run where a gang's trying to get a convoy through the desert and the other gangs trying to ambush them and take them out. Again, really, really fun. And then we've got the death race that I mentioned earlier, where, yeah, it does what it says on the tin, really. It is a death race. It's going to be horrific. There's going to be a lot of casualties, but I imagine it's going to be a lot of fun. We also get updated skill lists, including skills that vehicles can have as well, so driving skills. So, like I say, by having them as their own fighter card, it makes it a lot easier to be able to gear up and level up those vehicles, so that's really fun. We also get a full list of the Ash Wastes gang tactics cards that are included in the box as well. Like I say, you get card versions of these, but for completion you also get the lists. Nice miniatures gallery with all the models from the box, and a nice kind of round summary that goes through everything that happens within a turn. So really, really good for kind of keeping track of what's happening. So that was a look at Necromunda Ash Wastes from Games Workshop. Massive thanks again to Games Workshop who sent us this a little bit early to have a look at and review for you guys. I'm frantically painting up the gang. You'll have seen earlier in the video I've managed to make a good start on painting up the contents. Once we've painted this and got some gangs ready to go, what we are going to do is film a video series on this. We are going to start a new campaign, go out into the Ash Wastes and see how long we last. So hopefully we'll have a couple of gangs in that, and with any luck, some of the kind of expansion material comes out while we're fighting through that campaign, and then we can add it to our forces. So yeah, really, really cool, cool box. It is £180 for the box, which is a lot, but you get an awful lot of stuff in there. I think miniatures wise, off the top of my head, is about £250 worth of miniatures in here, if you include all the vehicles and all the scenery, plus you get the hardback rulebook and all the tokens and stuff. So for me, I think this is great value. Now obviously, if you only want to collect one of these gangs, or you're not too fussed on the scenery, then obviously you might be better waiting for the separate releases. But certainly for the kind of Necromunda completionist who's going to buy all this stuff anyway, you do get a saving by getting this in one go. So yeah, really, really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how Games Workshop expand on this as well with further books and releases and miniatures. We've already seen a couple of models teased on Warhammer Community. So like I say, I can't imagine it being too far us having a House of Ash, for want of a better title, coming out with the rules for the full gang list for the Nomads, and maybe vehicles for each of the existing gangs. That'd be pretty fun. So yeah, stay tuned to the channel if you do want to see some more Necromunda stuff. If you'd like this, why not give us a follow as well? We do regular videos, unboxings, battle reports. I have also written a full companion piece over on spruesandbrews.com as well, where I go into a bit more detail on how everything works. So if you are interested in Necromunda, check that out, because it's been massive fun to write. And yeah, I'm really excited to get some battles on in the Ash Wastes. So until next time, see you later and have a great weekend.